So what we're aiming for here is to create this green sky in Bryce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this window over in my other monitor. It's very handy to have two monitors. Even if your other monitor is just an old CRT monitor, it's very handy because Bryce has the ability to pick colours out from the palettes from the other monitor, which isn't always possible in every application. I'll just demonstrate this. In the sky and fog, we're going to look at, if you hover over these, you'll see in the bottom left hand corner you'll get a guide as to what each of these controls does. So you've got controls at the top and these palettes at the bottom, and a little drop down menu there that says sky options, and here we've got another one that's sky and fog options, and this button will take us into the Skylab. The first thing I'm going to do is modify the haze colour, and if I just left click on this and then take my dropper across to the other monitor, I can actually suck the haze colour off the image that I'm wanting to copy. Otherwise I'd have to measure that colour in a paint package, for example, and then enter the values. And if I had to do that, then I could use, say, Paint Shop Pro, get the RGB values, and if I hold the Alt key down while clicking on this little swatch, I can enter RGB values, or I could enter hue, luminance and saturation values, it doesn't really matter which, and get the colour that way, but it's much easier just to pick it off. So give that a quick render. You can see I've got this narrow band of haze. The haze in the other image, if I just show you this, is a bit thicker. Now if I want to get that effect, what I can do is use this control here, which allows me to modify the cloud height. So left click on that and drag to the right, and I can actually lift the clouds up. A practical upshot of this is it also lifts the band of haze up. So it gives me control over the height of the haze without having to modify any of the haze settings in the Skylab, which appear under the atmosphere tab. So what else have we got here? We've got blue sky, and really the entire sky is green. So under this little arrow here we can select the custom sky options, and this gives us sun glow colour, sky colour and horizon colour. Now if I select this one, I can pick a colour out of here that's going to be a fairly dark green to represent the sky colour, so that gives me my predominantly green sky now. At the moment all you can see is the stratus clouds. If we go here we can switch the cumulus clouds on. The cumulus clouds come with additional controls. We can thicken them up or thin them out with this control, and we can change the colour of them here. So if I want to change the colour of them here to a green colour, I'll pick another green colour out of the sky off the other monitor, so we've got some green broad areas of cloud now. It might not be immediately obvious what the horizon colour does, but this mixes a colour in with clouds that approach the horizon. It doesn't affect the sky as such, it only affects the clouds. So if I make this very dark, like black for example, then it'll tint these clouds as they're approaching the horizon on the stratus layer. This control here works in two directions. We can increase the frequency of the clouds with left and right, and the amplitude of their effect. We can also, if we pull it right down, produce a negative amplitude, so that takes the cloud away from some places and fills it in where it was before, and vice versa. So it's just inverting the effect of the clouds. So I suppose, before we go too far, we should have a look at what makes the clouds the shape they appear to be. So if we go into the Skylab by clicking on this button, we can go to cloud cover, and we've got the stratus clouds and the cumulus clouds, and the ability to edit each one in turn. I'll just edit the stratus clouds and show you how that works. So if I hit edit, it takes you into the deep texture editor, which is really the core of all the procedural materials in Bryce. There are three controls that you can open up: noise, phase and filter. This can get quite complicated, so it's probably best if you look at some of the other tutorials that I've made for deep texture editor and modifying materials. But essentially, if you go on to noise, you can do things like modify the function that generates the shape of these clouds. So this is a frequency, so if I say increase this value for y, it causes the clouds to be compressed in a certain direction, which can make them appear stripy. We're only really concerned about the two-dimensional appearance of the clouds, because the default sky in Bryce and its cloud effects are all two-dimensional. You have to go to volumetric materials, which isn't really handled by the sky if you want 3D clouds. That's another topic entirely. So we'll just stick with 2D. So it's what we see here that we're concerned with. So there you can say you've created streaky clouds. If you didn't want them to cover the entire sky, you'd have to incorporate another component that restricted the spread of these clouds. For example, if I drag and drop this component into here, a multiply function has a tendency to increase the contrast of these outputs in the alpha channel, and modify this one to a different procedural function. So let's use stucco noise because that's patchy. Hold the Alt key down and click on the frequency, so they all become the same frequency, which is a lower frequency. You can see that how that's become patchy. There are also blend modes to consider, so we could add them together. So you've got thin bits of cloud, medium bits of cloud, quite thick bits of cloud, all in that preview there. As I say, this is quite a deep topic, so we can't really cover it in this video. I just want to show you that the shape of the clouds can be modified, so you can get radically different appearances in the sky by changing these functions. And this one can be edited in the same way as that one. So I'll just check out of that now, and we'll see what effect those changes have had. So I've created sort of streaky, patchy clouds. Now the other thing to consider here, as well as changing the frequency of this and the amplitude of that, and lifting and lowering the clouds and increasing and decreasing the cloud cover, as well as the haze values, so you've got a wide range of control. You can also consider the sun glow colour, because that is a broad halo of colour around the sun. Now as I've got things set up in my scene, let's just switch the overhead view by pressing keyboard shortcut 2. I've got the camera facing what I'll call north, and this is advantageous because it means that if the sun is rolled round to there, it'll be right in front of the camera. Press 1 to switch to perspective camera view. So I roll my sun round now, and that'll give you some idea of the effect of having the sun glow colour behind the cloud. So I've got our light source, and if I created an object in the scene, you'd be able to see by the shadows cast that it's casting the light in this direction towards us. That we have now lightish clouds, so appear lighter on the background on this side, but because of the sun glow colour, they appear dark against the sun glow colour itself. So I can create quite a nice effect in balancing the sky colours out in the sky. So that's created a greenish sky fairly quickly. I've just increased the frequency there, and if I increase the altitude, you'll see how that affects the distribution of these clouds across the sky and increases the height of the haze. Now when all's done in this respect, and you can see now we've got the light behind this object, so it's not really lit, so that's maybe not convenient, you might think, but you can see the sun just there. Bryce has a very handy facility which allows us, if we go into the Skylab here and go to image based lighting, we can use a HDRI image, we can select sky dome only, and then use sky. We set the resolution of this. It doesn't have to be large. We don't have to use it as a backdrop. So if we check this now, and then we just use this option here, render in scene, we can now use this as a light source, the entire sky, to light our scene. And we don't really need any specularity value, but we might need a bit more HDR effect. So the sun has already been incorporated as part of this, so the sunlight's disabled. So the light is now being provided by the sky that we've made, and it's going to light our scene, which means we'll get far more sophisticated lighting on this object. So you can now see we've got this major shadow from the sun, but we're also getting lots of subtle lighting effects from the light sources that have been generated from this sky that are now shining down on this scene. So this is a very handy facility of Bryce, probably a little bit further than I expected this tutorial to go, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So there you go. That's a way of making a green sky in Bryce, then using that sky as a light source to create more sophisticated lighting for your scene. You might be aware, just slightly, that there are sort of bands in the shadow regions here. Now this in turn is controlled by the quality setting, which can go up or down. So if you're developing a scene, you could use low quality setting, 16 simulated light source, you'll see distinct shadows extending from the object. As this setting goes up, for your final render for example, then it generates more light sources in the sky, to the point where you can probably see here that it's nearly impossible to see the individual shadows being generated by the multiple light sources in the sky. So that provides very good quality lighting for your scene, and is ideal for an outdoor environment. For interior scenes, a different strategy is needed, but for outdoors, it's a very good way of generating your light sources. And as you can see, you've created sophisticated lighting purely from the sky you've made, which is very nice, and it's going to be exactly matching the sky that you've got. Okay then, that's the end of the video. Hope you found that interesting and useful, and you'll go on to experiment with the Skylab and potentially image-based lighting in Bryce 7.1 Pro.